Hello everyone, welcome to Molecura. Today we're going to have an overview of oxidative phosphorylation. We're going to see what happens exactly when our body is consuming fuels from food to make ATP as energy. Before we jump into glycolysis, it's a good idea to understand what's happening during energy production in our body. So the main source of energy in our body is going to be in the mitochondria. So in the mitochondria, what's happening is that we get the electron transport chain. So in the electron transport chain, what is happening is that electrons are getting transferred to the inner membrane of the mitochondria, and this transport is going to be used to make energy. So what is happening? Electrons are coming here, and these are proteins that are in the inner membrane of the mitochondria and are going to keep transferring the electrons throughout this chain. And when this is happening, they're going to use the energy from the transport of these electrons to get protons into the intermembrane space. So protons are getting transported through this energy into the intermembranous space. And what happens is that the increase on the number of the protons here is going to build a gradient of protons that would want to go back to the matrix of the mitochondria. And this happens through an enzyme which we will talk about more in detail on the next videos about the electron transport chain. And this enzyme is called ATP synthase. And so what happens here, the ATP synthase is going to take these protons and is going to transfer them back here. So as the protons are moving towards the matrix of the mitochondria, the ATP synthase, which is our enzyme, is actually working on converting ADP to ATP. So here actually our ATP is getting produced. So when we are talking about energy metabolism in our body, we are talking about this process, which in electron transport chain, this is happening. So now there comes a question that we are having a lot of electrons getting transported here. What is the last acceptor of electron? And your answer is going to be oxygen. So the last acceptor of electron is going to be oxygen, which will accept the final electron. Now, as oxygen takes this electron, it's going to be converted into water. Now, where does this oxygen come from? It comes from the lungs. We are breathing in oxygen. And once we are breathing in oxygen, this oxygen is going to go to your blood, is going to go to the red blood cell, is going to get attached to your hemoglobin, and it's going to move from the blood to the tissue, to the cells. So this oxygen is going to end up coming here to participate in the electron transport chain. Now, we need to look into where does these electrons come from. These electrons come from electron carriers. And where are these electron carriers made? They are mostly made in the TCA cycle. And this TCA cycle is also happening in the matrix of the mitochondria. So what happens in the TCA cycle? We are going to have a molecule here that's called oxaloacetate. And this oxaloacetate is going to get converted into a molecule called citrate. And for this to happen, oxaloacetate, which is a 4-carbon molecule, needs to take in a molecule that's called acetyl coenzyme A. And acetyl coenzyme A is going to come into this mix and is going to make our citrate. Now, this is our TCA cycle, and this cycle will go on until it makes another molecule of oxaloacetate. A couple of reactions that we will go into details of them in another video. Now, the point is that while these reactions are happening, there are molecules getting made, and these molecules are electron carriers. So from this TCA cycle, we are getting an ADH, and we are getting FADH2. and these are going to be our electron carriers. And these electron carriers will end up carrying electron to the electron transport chain. So our end result here is for us to have electrons go to the electron transport chain. So when electrons go here, protons get pumped to the intermembrane space of the mitochondria, and the gradient of protons here are going to be used by ATP synthase to pump these protons back into the matrix of the mitochondria, and through this it's going to synthesize our ATP. So everything that is happening so far is for us to feed these electron carriers into the electron transport chain. And where are these electron carriers coming from? It's coming from the TCA cycle. Now, as we said, for the TCA cycle to start, we have our oxaloacetate and we have our citrate. Oxaloacetate gets converted into citrate, and for this it has to react with acetyl coenzyme A. Where does acetyl coenzyme A come from? Now we'll go to our glycolysis. So when we are eating, we are going to have our glucose. This is our glucose. The glucose will undergo glycolysis and it will get converted to pyruvate. And our pyruvate will go through a reaction, and through this reaction is going to get converted into acetyl coenzyme A. So this is our glycolysis here. And pyruvate is going to get converted into acetyl coenzyme A. So this is the point of our glycolysis. Glycolysis by itself is going to make a small amount of ATP. It's going to be 2 ADP converted into 2 ATP. This is the net production of ATP into glycolysis. So when we have our pyruvate will undergo a reaction through pyruvate dehydrogenase, and what we will end up with is acetyl coenzyme A, which is ready to go into our TCA cycle. Furthermore, we could have production of acetyl coenzyme A from beta oxidation of fatty acids. So here what we have is our fatty acid, which will undergo beta oxidation to get converted to acetyl coenzyme A. So this is going to be our beta oxidation. Furthermore, we could have our ketone bodies. We could have ketone bodies that get metabolized into acetyl coenzyme A. We could have amino acids undergo catabolism. Amino acids undergo catabolism to become also acetyl coenzyme A. So everything we are having during the first stage of catabolism is to produce acetyl coenzyme A. Once we have produced our acetyl coenzyme A, it's going to go to the TCA cycle. And the goal of the TCA cycle is to make molecules that we call NADH and FADH2. And these molecules are our electron carriers, which will go to the inner membrane of the mitochondria to get transported on the proteins that are part of the electron transport chain. And through this transport of electrons, they are going to pump protons out of the matrix of the mitochondria. And these protons, once they are gathered here, they want to go back to the matrix of the mitochondria. And this happens through an enzyme here that we call ATP synthase. These protons are going to go back to the matrix of the mitochondria, and ADP is going to be converted to ATP, and we're going to have mass production of adenosine triphosphate. The last acceptor of the electron is going to be oxygen, which is going to get reduced to water. This process, what we call oxidative phosphorylation, and this process is necessary for animal cells to produce energy. Without this process, the cell is going to die very quickly, and pathologies that are going to affect either availability of glucose, availability of fatty acids, availability of amino acids, availability of oxygen is going to result in pathology. And the pathology could be at any point during this process. It could be some enzyme deficiency in glycolysis. It could be some nutritional deficiency interfering with the TCA cycle. It could be a problem in the electron transport chain. It could be a toxin that's blocking one of these enzymes. It's going to be a problem with the lung, which is not getting oxygen readily available. It's going to be a problem in the blood vessel, which is blocking the blood flow, so we don't have hemoglobin going to that part of the body, so we don't have oxygen. So this does not happen. Electrons doesn't get transported. The TCA cycle will stop and we will go back until we would reach glycolysis, which will force the body into anaerobic respiration. It could be a problem with hemoglobin not being readily available, for example, anemia, and so on. So this is an overview of oxidative phosphorylation. We are going to be first talking about glycolysis in more detail. We're going to talk about how glycolysis is regulated in the body. We're going to have a detailed look at the TCA cycle, and we will also look at the electron transport chain in more detail to see what's happening with each of these proteins and how ATP is getting synthesized through the enzyme that we called ATP synthase. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to our channel, as it's going to support us to be able to produce more videos like this for you in the future.